Happy Thursday! I'm back with more My Side of the Mountain. I had to stop mid-paragraph last time because somebody knocked on my door, but if you don't remember, Sam had just met an outlaw in the woods and had started calling him Bando. And, well, he thinks the guy's an outlaw. He doesn't really know. But they are becoming friends, it seems, and they are trying to make a raft so that Sam can catch some bigger fish. So let's see what they're doing. We fished, we swam a little, and I told him I hoped to make a raft pretty soon so I could float into deeper water and perhaps catch bigger fish. When Bando heard this, he took my axe and immediately began to cut young trees for this purpose. I watched him and said, "You must have lived on a farm or something." At that moment, a bird sang. "The wood pewee," said Bando, stopping his work. He stepped into the woods seeking it. Now I was astonished. "How would you know about a wood pewee in your business?" I grew bold enough to ask. "Just what do you think my business is?" he said as I followed him. "Well, you're not a minister." "Right." "You're not a doctor or a lawyer." "Correct." "You're not a businessman or a sailor." "Nope, I'm not." "Nor do you dig ditches." "I do not." "Well, guess." Suddenly I wanted to know for sure, so I said it. "You are a murderer or a thief or a racketeer, and you are hiding out." Bando stopped looking for the pewee. He turned and stared at me. At first I was frightened. A bandit might do anything. But he wasn't mad. He was laughing. He had a good deep laugh, and it kept coming out of him. I smiled, then grinned and laughed with him. "What's funny, Bando?" I asked. "I like that," he finally said. "I like that a lot." The tickle deep inside him kept him chuckling. I had no more to say, so I ground my heel in the dirt while I waited for him to get over the fun and explain it all to me. "Thoreau, my friend, I am just a college English teacher lost in the Catskills. I came out to hike around the woods, got completely lost yesterday, found your fire, and fell asleep beside it. I was hoping the scoutmaster and his troop would be back for supper and help me home." "Oh, no," my comment. Then I laughed. "You see, Bando, before I found you, I heard squad cars screaming up the road. Occasionally, you read about bandits that hide out in the forest, and I was just so sure that you were someone they were looking for." We gave up the pewee and went back to the raft making, talking very fast now and laughing a lot. He was fun. Then something sad occurred to me. "Well, if you're not a bandit, you will have to go home very soon, and there's no point in teaching you how to live on fish and bark and plants." "I can stay a little while," he said. "This is summer vacation. I must admit, I had not planned to eat crayfish on my vacation, but I'm rather getting to like it." "Maybe I can stay until your school opens," he went on. "That's after Labor Day, isn't it?" I was very still, thinking how to answer that. Bando sensed this. He turned to me with a big grin. "You really mean you are going to try to winter it out here?" "I think I can." "Well," he sat down, rubbed his forehead in his hands, and looked at me. "Thoreau, I have led a varied life. Dishwasher, sax player, teacher. To me, it has been an interesting life. Just now, it seems very dull." He sat a while with his head down, then looked up at the mountains and the rocks and the trees. I heard him sigh. "Let's go fish. We can finish this another day." And that is how I came to know Bando. We became very good friends in the week or 10 days that he stayed with me, and he helped me a lot. We spent several days gathering white oak acorns and ground nuts, harvesting the blueberry crop, and smoking fish. We flew frightful every day just for pleasure of lying on our backs in the meadow and watching her mastery of the sky. I had lots of meat, so what she caught these days was all hers. It was a pleasant time, warm with occasional thunder showers, some of which we stayed out in. We talked about books. He did know a lot of books and could quote exciting things from them. One day Bando went to town and came back with 5 pounds of sugar. "I want to make blueberry jam," he announced. All these excellent berries and no jam. He worked 2 days at this. He knew how to make jam. He'd watched his pa make it in Mississippi, but we got stuck on what to put in it. I wrote this one night. August 29. The raft is almost done. Bando has promised to stay until we can sail out into the deep fishing holes. Bando and I found some clay along the stream bank. It was as slick as ice. Bando thought it would make good pottery. We shaped some jars and lids. They look good, not Wedgwood, he said, but containers. We dried them on the rock in the meadow, and later Bando made a clay oven and baked them in it. He thinks they might hold the blueberry jam he has been making. Sounds like something Mr. Randolph would do, huh? Bando got the fire hot by blowing on it with some homemade bellows that he fashioned from one of my skins that he tied together like a balloon. A reed is the nozzle. August 30. It was a terribly hot day for Bando to be firing clay jars, but he stuck with it. They look jam-worthy, as he says, and he filled 3 of them tonight. The jam is good. The pots remind me of crude flower pots without the hole in the bottom. Some of the lids don't fit. Bando says he will go home and read more about pottery making so that he can do a better job next time. We like the jam. We eat it on hard acorn pancakes. Later, Bando met the Baron Weasel today for the first time. I don't know where the Baron has been this past week, but suddenly he appeared on the rock and nearly jumped down Bando's shirt collar. Bando said he liked the Baron best when he was in his hole. September 3. Bando taught me how to make willow whistles today. He and I went to the stream and cut 2 fat twigs about 8 inches long. He slipped the bark on them. That means he pulled the wood out of the bark, leaving a tube. He made a mouthpiece at one end, cut a hole beneath it, and used the wood to slide up and down like a trombone. We played music until the moon came up. Bando could even play jazz on the willow whistles. They are wonderful instruments, sounding much like the wind in the top of the hemlocks. Sad tunes are best suited to willow whistles. When we played The Young Voyager, tears came to our eyes. It was so sad. And there's a picture here. It says, "This is how you make slide willow whistles." Looks pretty cool. Looks like something I want to try. There were no more notes for many days. Bando had left me saying, "Goodbye, I'll see you at Christmas." I was so lonely that I kept sewing on my moccasins to keep myself busy. I sewed every free minute for 4 days, and when they were finished, I began a glove to protect my hand from Frightful's sharp talons. One day, when I was thinking very hard about being alone, Frightful gave her gentle call of love and contentment. I stood up. "Bird," I said. I had almost forgotten how we used to talk. She made tiny movements with her beak and fluffed her feathers. This was a language I had forgotten since Bando came. It meant she was glad to see me and hear me, that she was well fed and content. I picked her up and squeaked into her neck feathers. She moved her beak, turned her bright head, and bit my nose very gently. Jesse Coon James came down from the trees for the first time in 10 days. He finished my fish dinner. Then, just before dusk, the Baron came up on his boulder and scratched and cleaned and played with a fern leaf. I had the feeling we were all back together again. See, those animals trust Sam, but they didn't know Bando well enough, so they all kind of either were really shy or just hid altogether. All right, next chapter, in which the autumn provides food and loneliness. September blazed a trail into the mountains. First, she burned the grasses. The grasses seeded and were harvested by the mice and the winds. Then she sent the squirrels and chipmunks running boldly through the forest, collecting and hiding nuts. Then she frosted the aspen leaves and left them sunshine yellow. Then she gathered the birds together in flocks, and the mountaintop was full of songs and twitterings and flashing wings. The birds were ready to move to the south. And I, Sam Gribley, felt just wonderful, just wonderful. I pushed the raft down the stream and gathered arrowleaf bulbs, cattail tubers, bulrush roots, and the nut-like tubers of the sedges. There's some cattail roots right there. And then the crop of crickets appeared, and Frightful hopped all over the meadow, snagging them in her great talons and eating them. I tried them because I had heard they were good. I think it was another species of cricket that was meant. I think the field cricket would taste excellent if you were starving. I was not starving, so I preferred to listen to them. I abandoned the crickets and went back to the goodness of the earth. I smoked fish and rabbit, dug wild onions by the pouchful, and raced September for her crop. Here's a picture of the wild onion. October 15. Today, the Baron Weasel looked moldy. I couldn't get near enough to see what was the matter with him, but it occurs to me that he might be changing his summer fur for his white winter mantle. If he is, it is an itchy process. He scratches a lot. Seeing the Baron changing his mantle for winter awoke the first fears in me. I wrote that note on a little birch bark, curled up on my bed, and shivered. The snow and the cold and the long, lifeless months are ahead, I thought. The wind was blowing hard and cool across the mountain. I lit my candle, took out the rabbit and squirrel hides I had been saving, and began rubbing and kneading them to softness. The Baron was getting a new suit for winter. I must have one too. Some fur underwear, some mittens, fur-lined socks. Frightful, who was sitting on the footpost of the bed, yawned, fluffed, and thrust her head into the slate-gray feathers of her back. She slept. I worked for several hours. I must say here that I was beginning to wonder if I should not go home for the winter and come back again in the spring. Everything in the forest was getting prepared for the harsh months. Jesse Coon James was as fat as a barrel. He came down the tree slowly, his fat falling in a roll over his shoulders. The squirrels were working and storing food. They were building leaf nests. The skunks had burrows and plugged themselves in at dawn with bunches of leaves. No drafts could reach them. As I thought of the skunks and all the animals preparing themselves against the winter, I realized suddenly that my tree would be as cold as the air if I did not somehow find a way to heat it. Notes. Today I rafted out into the deep pools of the creek to fish. It was a lazy sort of autumn day, the sky clear, the leaves beginning to brighten, the air warm. I stretched out on my back because the fish weren't biting, and hummed. My line jerked, and I sat up to pull, but it was too late. However, I was not too late to notice that I had drifted into the bank, the very bank where Bando had dug the clay for the jam pots. At that moment, I knew what I was going to do. I was going to build a fireplace of clay, even fashion a little chimney of clay. It would be small, but enough to warm the tree during the long winter. Next day, I dragged the clay up the mountain to my tree in my second best pair of city pants. I tied the bottoms of the legs, stuffed them full, and as I looked down on my strange cargo, I thought of scarecrows and Halloween. I thought of the gang dumping ash cans on 3rd Avenue and soaping up the windows. Suddenly, I was terribly lonely. The air smelled of leaves, and the cool wind from the stream hugged me. The warblers in the trees above me seemed gay and glad about their trip south. I stopped halfway up the mountain and dropped my head. I was lonely and on the verge of tears. Suddenly, there was a flash, a prickling sensation on my leg, and I looked down in time to see the Baron leap from my pants to the cover of fern. He scared the loneliness right out of me. I ran after him and chased him up the mountain, losing him from time to time in the ferns and crow feet. We stormed into camp, an awful sight, the Baron bouncing and screaming ahead of me, and me dragging that half-scarecrow of clay. Frightful took one look and flew to the end of her leash. She doesn't like the Baron and watches him, well, like a hawk. I don't have to leave her alone. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't like to leave her alone. End notes. Must make fireplace. I think that's going to do it for today. See you guys tomorrow. Bye.